What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in this video I'm going to be going through some of the top sell-high trade candidates heading into week 5 of the NFL season. So these are just going to be players that are either coming off of a hot start to the season or just a boom game here in week 4. I think this is a good opportunity to pivot off of them. Not saying they're going to be terrible, not saying you have to trade these players, but I just think if it works out, this could be a good time to pivot to another player either at the same position or, kind of pivot to a different position. That could also work. I already have my buy low video up if you guys are interested. Waiver wire targets also. If you like the video, hit that like button. It really helps me out. But let's jump into my first sell high player, and it's going to be Derrick Henry. And I just think that this is the perfect opportunity to get out if you want to. I went in depth on Derrick Henry in a video, I think it was on Friday. Basically, it was just going through some players that people were panicking on, and I was kind of just breaking down whether I thought panicking on these players was rational, like should you really be worried about these guys long term. And Henry was honestly the one that I felt most concerned with long term, just in terms of where you drafted him and what his production had looked like through 3 weeks. And not even his production, that was definitely a part of it, but also just his usage. Because in games where the Titans are trailing, they have shown that they are totally comfortable pivoting to Tyjae Spears to be their lead back. Tyjae Spears outsnapped Derrick Henry in 2 of the first 3 games of the season. And even here in week 4, which was like a perfect game script for Henry, he still only played 4 less snaps. So he is still very, very involved, even in games where you think Derrick Henry would just be dominating all the snaps. The Titans went out. They blew out the Bengals here in week 4. Derrick Henry logged 22 carries, had his first real monster game of the season. You can always count on Derrick Henry for a few of those every year. This was one of them here in week 4. But just looking ahead at the Titans' upcoming schedule, I'm not super high on this Titans team as a whole. And so you're looking at some of their upcoming opponents. They have the Colts next week. The Colts have played a lot of teams tough through 4 weeks. Got the Ravens in week 6. That's a tough matchup. Then you got this stretch of the Falcons, Steelers, Bucks. Steelers probably a solid game for Derrick Henry, but Falcons defense is tough. The Buccaneers have been tough through 3 or 4 games into the season. And then you have the Jaguars. So maybe that's not an overly tough schedule, but that's also not a schedule that screams to me the Titans are going to be heavy favorites. They're going to be leading a lot of those games, which is going to lead to a great environment for Derrick Henry. That's not what I'm seeing when I look ahead on their schedule there. So I'm just saying here with Derrick Henry is that if you were concerned about him heading into the week, if you didn't like what you saw through 3 weeks, you didn't like the usage, I think those concerns are still there, and this wouldn't be the game where it's okay, everything's perfect, because these games were going to happen, right? He was going to have some games where they were ahead early on, and they're just able to use him as a hammer, rack up a ton of carries. He was going to get a few of those, even with the concerning usage, but this is a problem that I think is probably going to continue moving forward. So if you were, totally cool with him, you just thought he was, underwhelming, but you were totally on board long term, then, by all means, hold on to him. But if you were concerned, I'm just kind of telling you this could be the time to get out, sell high. Looking at the running back position, I like ETN as a straight-up trade target. It's kind of tough to find another straight-up option that you really love. The mid to back-end RB1 area is really gross. You can't feel confident with a lot of those guys. So I like ETN as a straight-up option. Maybe you pivot to an elite wide receiver, or you try to jump into that Bijan Pollard tier. Obviously, no one's going to give you Bijan or Pollard straight up for Derrick Henry. I mean, if they did, that would be amazing. But you probably have to do a 2 for 2 where you're taking an L on the other side of the deal. Maybe they're getting a slightly better wide receiver. You'd be getting the better running back. So trades like that I think could be interesting here for Derrick Henry. Now, the next sell high is going to be Terry McLaurin. And it just kind of feels like Terry's again in a spot where clearly he's very talented. He's a very solid NFL wide receiver, but he's just in an offense that's really going to lack the environment to really unlock his ceiling. He's coming off the best game of the season, 10 targets, 8 receptions, 86 receiving yards, and then he was helped out fantasy-wise because he had a fluky fumble recovery touchdown. I think it was Brian Robinson fumbled on the goal line. Terry McLaurin recovered it, which goes to his fantasy points, which is nice to see, obviously, if you had him in your lineup. But we look at this Commanders offense, and they've just been really committed to spreading the ball around. Ideally, you look at the weapons in this offense, right? Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, you even throw Curtis Samuel in there. You would like to see the targets pretty concentrated between those guys. That's really not how it's been through 4 weeks. Terry McLaurin only has a 19% target share, which is just not ideal in an offense that's also going to be lacking touchdown upside. So the volume just hasn't been there through 4 weeks. I think this is a good opportunity to pivot out. He's coming off a big game. He has a pretty solid name. People view him as a very reliable, like, wide receiver 2 option. I'm just going to be throwing out a bunch of names that I'd be sending out offers for as like the first group. Jalen Waddle, I think it would be tough to get that deal done, but he has kind of underwhelmed. Metcalf, Ayuk, Debo coming off a pretty terrible game. Amari Cooper coming off a down game. Michael Pittman coming off a down game. Christian Watson, talked about him in my buy low video. Zay Flowers. That's like the initial tier I'd be looking at. And then you could also try to do like a 2-for-1, throwing Terry McLaurin in with another piece to get into like more of that elite wide receiver tier. So he's my second sell high. And then my third and final sell high is going to be at the running back position. It's going to be Kahlil Herbert. And we saw Herbert seemingly regain control of this backfield, with the Bears also hitting a boom game going up against the Broncos. The problem here with Kahlil Herbert is that I don't really have confidence that either of those things stick. Like, I don't have confidence that he's going to continue to be the workhorse, and I don't have confidence that this Bears offense is going to continue to look competent. So Kahlil Herbert here in Week 4 against the Broncos, 78% snap share, 65% raw participation. He took 18 of the 23 running back carries and was also targeted 5 times. So that's pretty much workhorse usage. You'll love to see it if you had him on your roster. But through 3 weeks, this had been a pretty tight split between Kahlil Herbert and Roschon Johnson. And it's not like either one was amazing. It's not like either one was terrible. Like, Roschon Johnson didn't do anything to be completely removed from this backfield. He was still involved as the number 2. But like, in terms of being separated from this 50-50 split, it's not like Roschon Johnson did something egregious to lose playing time. And he's still a rookie, so he is still very live to completely break back into this split, make it a 50-50 again, or even at some point, like, take over. This is probably not a team that's contending. I feel like we can say that pretty confidently. I'm a Bears fan. We are not contending. We're definitely contending more for that number 1 overall pick. But that could lead to a situation where they pivot to the younger option to lead the backfield, kind of see what they're going to get out of him. Roschon Johnson is still very live in this backfield, and this was also a group with Kahlil Herbert and Roschon Johnson that was pretty unplayable through 3 weeks. Like Week 1, Week 2, Week 3, you probably didn't feel very solid throwing Kahlil Herbert or Roschon Johnson into your lineup. So just because the Bears could run the ball against the Broncos, it doesn't mean they're going to be super strong doing that moving forward. And also it could mean they're not super strong doing it in a split between Kahlil Herbert and Roschon Johnson. I think in this running back range, it is kind of tough to trade running back for running back. I think potentially like Jerome Ford could be someone you try to flip them for. Brown's coming off a down game. But I think Herbert could also be someone who's used in like a package, throwing another depth piece, depth wide receiver to get into like that RB2 area where you feel more confident playing those players week to week. But that's going to wrap it up for my 3 sell high players. Like I said at the top of the video, you do not have to trade these players. Do not sell high on these players for low, right? If you're not going to get a good return off a boom game, don't just give them away for free, but just, float them out there, see if you get any bites, and then if you get a solid offer, you can make the move. So Derrick Henry, Terry McLaurin, Kahlil Herbert, those are players I'd be looking to sell high on. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit that like button. Go check out my other videos today. Thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.